So it was November last year, and I was sitting in my work, in my office, and my phone rang, and it was Anne-Marie from Aspire. And she was phoning to tell me that I was nominated for an Australian of the Year award. And I immediately thought to myself, this has to be a joke. But as I walked into the Westin Hotel that night in Perth for the State Award ceremony, it dawned on me that this was real. But it also dawned on me that I had absolutely no chance of winning this award. My fellow nominees that evening were Professor Len Collard, Wajak Nungar Elder, Professor of Indigenous Studies at UWA, the CEO of Millennium Kids, whose name is Kat Anier. For 25 years, she's been empowering young people to speak out in regards to things like racism, plastic waste, climate change. Ken Gibbons, who invented the Lottery West cinemas and has raised over $10 million for children's charities. And then there was me, who had started a charity that cuts people's hair for free. At that point, I made the executive decision to get stuck right into that free bar. Because not only is it the Glaswegian thing to do, it's also getting my money's worth. Because there was absolutely no way in the world that I was winning that award. But as it turns out, I won that award. And I walked onto that stage that night as the tipsy 2022 local hero from Western Australia, which meant that I was then going to Canberra to the National Award ceremony. Now, that charity that I mentioned is called Shortback and Sidewalks, and we are a not-for-profit or a for-purpose organization. We started round the corner, just behind Kakulis Brothers in 2015, 7 years ago. But we've now gone national. We operate in Perth, Sydney, Melbourne, and we also go out into the Northern Territory. And over the last 7 years, we've given over 7,000 free haircuts to people experiencing homelessness and women with lived experience of domestic violence, youth at risk, and rural Indigenous communities. I'm not a barber or a hairdresser, and I'm also not the person that should be going anywhere near your hair with a pair of scissors, but especially being from Glasgow as well. But I know the power of a fresh new haircut, and I know the power of a conversation with the person that cuts my hair. They are the, I guess, accidental counselors of society, you know? Like, you put your head in their hands and you tell them some of your deepest thoughts and feelings. So this meant that we were going to Canberra, and I always remember walking down that red carpet in Canberra with my beautiful partner Joe, my mum and dad, who came along. hotties. My mum and dad, they're over there. And I remember like walking down that red carpet and the cameras were flashing and the paparazzi were bloody jumping in front of you with microphones and all that sort of thing. And we were representing the West Side at that point. And I was really proud. And I kind of thought to myself, you know, this is a bit of a big deal. And as we got into that venue for the National Australian of the Year Awards, my old man confirmed this as he sat around at the table and looked at all of us and went, "This is a pretty bloody big deal, isn't it?" And then as my mother cleaned her glasses and looked around and was like, "Is that Kieran Perkins?" Bloody hell, there's Dylan Alcott. He's in the next bloody table. And there's Marsha. As Marsha Hines and her band played the first song of the night at the awards ceremony. So the awards came and went, and the next event on the list was morning tea at the lodge with ex-Prime Minister Scott Morrison and his wife, Jenny. It wasn't your average morning tea with Secret Service police everywhere you looked, with their dark sunnies on and their earpieces. You'd have to be pretty gutsy to try anything in that particular space, like potentially give ScoMo some side-eye. And I remember standing there, like looking at this big snaky bunch of people in regards to going down to the lodge where ScoMo and his wife were standing, and the chair of the Australia Day Committee, Danny Roche, who's an Olympic gold medalist in hockey, she was like trolling up and down that line and looking at people and being like, "This is your moment. Your message has got to be stronger than ever before. Do not stuff this up. You've got 1 minute with the Prime Minister." So this was a bit of a red flag at this point, right? Like, so as my partner will attest, I'm not necessarily always the best at getting on message and being on point. So we started getting towards that front door with the Prime Minister and Mrs. Morrison and all these people. And for whatever reason, with about two meters to go before we said hello to ScoMo and his wife, my partner decided to grab my shoulder and say, "Craig, they've got a dog out the back." And by that point, my messaging had gone to absolute shit. And then smash, go the cameras. So, I remember getting into that garden, and I remember speaking to ScoMo, and the first thing I said was that my partner and I, we also have dogs. And ScoMo goes to me, he was like, "Oh yeah, that's our dog, he's Buddy, he's a schnoodle." And we were like, "Oh yeah, look, awesome, Joe and I have got 2 Jack Russells. One's called Jimmy. He's a bit of a pain in the ass. And the other one's called Herbie, and he's also a little bit of a pain in the ass as well." They're Jack Russells. They're not here with us, actually. They're back in Perth. So I remember getting into that garden and sitting there and looking around and realizing that we were at the naughty kids table. And what gave me that impression of being on the naughty kids table was, to my right was Grace Tame. And her partner Max, who, unlike Joe and I, had created a national media storm with their message. And then to my left was a chap called Craig Leeson, who was the Australian of the Year from Tasmania, who has just released a movie called A Plastic Ocean, which touches on things like climate change and whatever else. And I remember as Craig was speaking to the people, so ScoMo's sort of servants, he turned around and said, "Excuse me, is the plastic water bottles on our table, are they single-use plastics or?" So anyway, you could tell things were going really well at our table. So I remember Danny Roche, the chair of the Australia Day Committee, managed to find me in that garden. And she looks at me and goes, "Hollywood, do you want to have another go with the Prime Minister? Because that first time didn't go that well, hey?" So I took her up on her offer, and I had that second chat with the Prime Minister. And I did manage to explain to him why I happened to be in his garden that day. But since then, both federal governments have announced funding for shortback and sidewalks. Which means that we can continue to give those positive connections and have those conversations all around Australia. And after that, we got stuck straight into that seasonal fruit platter because there wasn't any beer. Thank you very much.